Story 1. Now we will look at a tragedy in 2013 in California, USA, a horrifying case that shocked and deeply shocked the public. On the happiest day of her life, Grace Carter, a famous model whose career was at its peak, was brutally murdered by her own younger brother, Samuel Carter, a talented young architect. The incident not only took Grace's life but also caused her husband, to whom she had just exchanged vows, to meet a similar end. What makes this case even more terrifying is the motive behind it: Samuel's sick and unacceptable love for his sister, leading to an irreversible tragedy on what should have been the happiest day. Samuel Carter was born in 1988 to a well-off family in California. From a young age, Samuel showed himself to be a mischievous and hyperactive child, always looking to explore and challenge the limits around him. He was often in trouble at school, from vandalizing classes to organizing dangerous games with his friends. However, Samuel was an intelligent boy, always having a creative thinking ability that was superior to his peers. As he grew up, Samuel discovered his passion for architecture. He decided to pursue this field and quickly asserted his talent. Samuel graduated with honors from a prestigious university and soon became a promising young architect. His designs were highly appreciated by many people, not only for their creativity but also for their meticulousness and precision to every detail. However, despite his success in his career, Samuel always had an inexplicable inferiority complex. He felt that he could never truly achieve the perfection he aspired to, especially when compared to his beautiful and successful older sister, Grace Carter. Grace Carter, a famous model with stunning beauty and a brilliant career, is always the center of attention. With her confidence and attractive style, Grace not only wins the hearts of the public, but also the pride of her family. However, for Samuel, Grace is more than just a sister. Since he was a child, Samuel has been fascinated by Grace's beauty and perfection. He cannot take his eyes off his sister and always longs to be near her. Over time, Samuel's admiration and natural brotherly affection gradually transform into a secret and obsessive love. Samuel realizes that his feelings for Grace have exceeded the limits of a normal affection between siblings. He loves Grace intensely but is also filled with pain because he knows that this feeling is wrong and unacceptable. Every time he saw Grace being praised by others, or when she appeared radiantly in magazines and major events, Samuel felt his heart weighed down by conflicting emotions. Samuel's obsession with Grace became more and more serious as he could no longer control his emotions. He began to spend more time thinking about Grace, imagining scenarios where he could be with her forever. These thoughts not only increased Samuel's pain but also made him feel angry and jealous of anyone who had a close relationship with Grace. Although he tried to hide his feelings, this obsession began to affect Samuel's behavior. He becomes jealous and controlling, always wanting to know everything about Grace's personal life. Samuel begins to feel that no one can love and protect Grace better than him. These feelings increasingly push Samuel into a dark spiral where the line between love and possession begins to blur. On the contrary, Grace Carter is Samuel Carter's older sister, born in 1986, who has stood out with her unique and attractive beauty since childhood. Growing up in a middle-class family in California, she has always been the center of attention since she was a child. Her beautiful appearance with harmonious features, big round eyes and bright smile quickly made Grace the pride of her family and the admiration of those around her. However, what made her special was not only her appearance but also her gentle, lovable personality and the modesty that she always maintained, despite receiving a lot of attention. When she entered her teens, Grace began to realize the influence of her beauty and demeanor. Her peers and even adults praised and encouraged her to pursue a career in art or fashion. Realizing her potential, Grace decided to try her hand at modeling, a challenging field but also offering great opportunities for those with passion and talent. After graduating from high school, Grace began to pursue a modeling career seriously. With the support of her family, she took modeling classes and began to seek opportunities to work with famous photographers and designers. Grace's natural beauty and elegant style quickly attracted the attention of the fashion world, and soon after, she made important strides in her career. Grace began to appear on the covers of famous fashion magazines and participated in advertising campaigns for many major brands. Top designers began to invite her to participate in prestigious fashion shows, and Grace Carter's name gradually became familiar to the public. Not only famous in the United States, Grace also had the opportunity to work in major fashion capitals such as Paris, Milan, and London, where she continued to affirm her position in the international fashion industry. However, what really makes Grace loved is not only her beauty and successful career, but also her gentle, approachable personality and the sincerity she always shows in all her relationships. Even though she is at the peak of her career, Grace never lets fame change who she is. She always treats everyone around her with respect and sincerity, from fans to colleagues and employees in the industry. In 2013, during an evening at a luxury restaurant in downtown California, Grace Carter met Benjamin Adams. It was a chance but fateful encounter when both were attracted to each other at first sight. Grace, a famous model with a proud beauty and a brilliant career, immediately made a strong impression on Benjamin, a talented and experienced reporter. Benjamin, known for his insightful writing and ability to capture complex stories, was soon drawn to Grace's intelligence and charm. In turn, Grace felt that Benjamin was not only elegant, but also a deep soul, with whom she could share all the joys and sorrows of life. After that first meeting, Grace and Benjamin quickly developed their relationship. They began to date more often, explore new restaurants together, attend cultural events, and enjoy peaceful moments together. Both realized that they had found an ideal partner in each other. Their harmony came not only from their similar interests, but also from their mutual understanding and respect. Benjamin, with his gentleness and care, helped Grace feel safe and loved in this relationship. Grace and Benjamin's love not only brought them happiness, but also received enthusiastic support from friends and fans. They became an admired couple in the media, always appearing together at major events, hand in hand with bright smiles on their faces. Articles about them often appeared in famous magazines, praising the perfect combination of talent and beauty. Despite their busy work schedules, the two always made time for each other, showing a strong bond and sincere love. However, amidst the blessings and admiration from everyone around them, there was one person who could not accept this relationship: Samuel Carter, Grace's younger brother. Samuel had had special feelings for Grace since he was a child, but those feelings gradually turned into an obsessive and sick love. When he learned that Grace was happy with Benjamin, Samuel felt betrayed. He could not accept that Grace, whom he had always considered his own, could love another man. Since learning about the relationship between Grace and Benjamin, Samuel began to change. He became jealous and felt deeply hurt. The images of Grace and Benjamin happily together were like knives stabbing at his heart. Samuel began to feel uncomfortable, and those negative emotions gradually took over his mind. He felt pushed aside from Grace's life, whom he had always been obsessed with. Samuel could not accept that Grace was moving towards happiness with someone else. He began to follow them, appearing unexpectedly at their usual places, trying to find ways to prevent and interfere with their relationship. Samuel felt like every time he saw Grace and Benjamin together, he felt like he was losing a part of himself. Those feelings grew stronger and stronger, turning into blind jealousy and unbearable pain. Grace, although realizing the abnormality in Samuel's behavior, always believed that her brother was just having a hard time accepting her new relationship. She tried to get close to Samuel, talk to him, and reassure him that she still cared about him. But Grace's words did not seem to ease the pain in Samuel's heart. Instead, he became even angrier and felt abandoned. Samuel not only felt jealous, but was also haunted by the thought that Benjamin had stolen Grace from him. He began to imagine scenarios in his head about eliminating Benjamin, whom he considered his number one enemy. These thoughts kept running through Samuel's mind, turning into nightmares, making it impossible for him to focus on work or daily life. Samuel Carter's jealousy reached its peak when Grace and Benjamin officially announced that they were getting married in May 2013. This was a time when Samuel felt like everything around him was collapsing. He could not accept that his sister, whom he had been obsessed with and secretly loved for so many years, would leave his family to start a new life with another man. The feeling of betrayal and loss overwhelmed Samuel, making him more and more crazy. As the wedding day approached, Samuel felt more and more desperate. He could not bear the thought of Grace becoming the wife of Benjamin, whom he considered the one who had stolen his only love. Jealousy turned into a frenzy, and Samuel began to plan to stop the wedding at all costs. On the night of April 10, 2013, an evening that Samuel knew was the only one at home, he decided to do something he had thought about but never dared to do. Samuel sneaked into Grace's room with the intention of doing something he had longed for. This was an act driven by the sense of possession and the sick obsession that Samuel had nurtured in his heart since he was a child. Upon entering Grace's room, Samuel tried to approach his sister in secret, hoping to take her by force. However, Grace, though surprised and shocked by her brother's behavior, reacted strongly. She fiercely resisted and tried to push Samuel out of the room. This action not only shattered Samuel's distorted hopes, but also ignited the anger that had been simmering inside him for a long time. When Samuel realized that he could not carry out his intention, he became angry and frustrated. He walked out of Grace's room in a rage, feeling humiliated and rejected. This anger and humiliation only made Samuel's determination stronger. In his distorted mind, Samuel came to a terrible conclusion: if he could not have Grace, then no one else could. From that moment on, Samuel decided that he would not let anyone else possess Grace, not even Benjamin. He began to formulate a plan to eliminate both of them. Samuel knew that his actions would not only ruin Grace's life, but also his own. But in his madness, he no longer cared about the consequences. Samuel's mind was now filled with only one goal: to stop the wedding and keep Grace under his control forever, even if it meant destroying her. In the following days, Samuel began to act. He watched Grace and Benjamin more closely, recorded their every move, and learned about the wedding plans thoroughly. Samuel did not talk to anyone about his thoughts, but he knew in his heart that his time was running out. He needed to act before it was too late. Samuel began to gather the tools needed for his plan. He did not show any signs of anxiety or panic. On the contrary, he appeared calm and somewhat distant, leaving no doubt about what was going on in his mind. Grace, although she had noticed the change in Samuel's attitude, did not expect that her brother was preparing for a terrible act. As Grace and Benjamin's wedding day drew closer, Samuel felt the pressure increase. Sleepless nights, obsessive thoughts about stopping the wedding made Samuel even more determined. He knew that he could not back down, that he had to carry out his plan before things got out of control. In May 2013, the wedding of Grace Carter and Benjamin Adams took place at a luxurious hall in California. This was a long-awaited and eagerly awaited event, not only by the couple but also by their family, friends, and all those who loved them. Everything seemed perfect, from the flower decorations, the music, to the sparkling lights that created a romantic and cozy atmosphere. Guests, including many famous faces in the media and fashion world, gathered to witness the happiest moment in Grace and Benjamin's life. Grace, in her pure white wedding dress, was radiant with a happy smile. Benjamin, in his elegant suit, could not take his eyes off his bride. Everyone was preparing for the moment when the two exchanged their vows, committing to live together for the rest of their lives. The atmosphere in the hall was filled with love and blessings, but in a dark corner, a shadow of jealousy and hatred was gradually emerging. Samuel Carter, Grace's younger brother, had been silently watching the ceremony from the beginning. In his heart, anger and betrayal reached their peak. He could not bear to see his sister, whom he had secretly loved for so many years, exchange vows with another man. For Samuel, this was an unacceptable moment, and he had carefully prepared for his final act. As the ceremony was taking place, and all eyes were on the happy couple, Samuel quietly reached into his pocket, where he had hidden a small pistol. Thoughts of love, hatred, and betrayal filled Samuel's mind. He knew he was about to do something that could not be undone, but in his mind there was only one thought: if he could not have Grace, then no one else could. As Grace and Benjamin prepared to exchange their vows, Samuel, with bloodshot eyes and trembling hands, pulled out his gun. In an unexpected moment, he aimed straight at Grace and Benjamin and pulled the trigger. The gunshot rang out in the quiet space of the hall, silencing the crowd for a brief second before everything turned into chaos. Grace fell to the floor, still clutching Benjamin's hand. Benjamin was also shot, his face showing horror before everything went black. Screams echoed throughout the venue as the guests realized what was happening. Panic engulfed the ceremony. People began to run away to find a way to escape, while others tried to approach Grace and Benjamin to help. Samuel, with a calm expression but eyes filled with hatred, was unfazed by the chaos he had just caused. He took one last look at his sister, the person he had loved and haunted all his life, before turning and running away from the scene. Samuel knew he was running out of time, but in that moment he felt no regret or fear, only the feeling that everything had ended the way he had planned. While the police and ambulance were called to the scene, Samuel left the hall and quickly disappeared into the crowd outside. He ran through the streets, his heart pounding in his chest but his mind clear. Samuel knew he needed to find a safe place to hide while the police began to hunt him down. Samuel went to a small residential area in California where he thought no one would find him. It was a quiet area, out of the city's radar, where he could temporarily hide and think about his next steps. He went to an abandoned house that he knew from before, where no one would think to look for him. In the following days, Samuel tried to stay awake and inconspicuous. He watched the news on television, listened to the radio, and read the newspapers to stay informed. Every time his name appeared on the news, Samuel's heart pounded, but he kept calm. Samuel knew that time was not on his side, but he had not yet decided what to do next. The loneliness and the haunting of what he had done began to surround Samuel. During sleepless nights, he questioned his actions, wondering if everything was really over. Samuel felt that he had achieved his goal, but at the same time he felt a great void in his heart. He could not accept that Grace was dead and that his life had completely changed. In the deserted house, Samuel continued to hide, trying to stay undetected. But he knew that it was only temporary. Samuel felt the pressure weighing on his mind more and more, and the memories of that bloody wedding ceremony continued to haunt him. Samuel began to think about facing the consequences, but he was still unsure of what he would do. He knew that he had committed an unforgivable crime, but in his troubled mind, Samuel still could not fully accept responsibility for what had happened. He felt that he had been pushed into this situation, that everything had gotten out of control. Immediately after the shooting at the wedding of Grace Carter and Benjamin Adams, California police immediately launched an investigation to find Samuel Carter, who was identified as the prime suspect in the case. The horrific scene at the wedding left a deep impression on the minds of all present, and the chaos that ensued only increased the determination of the police force to quickly apprehend the perpetrator. Witnesses at the scene, including many friends and family of the couple, provided the police with important information about Samuel. Some recognized him immediately after the shooting, and initial evidence collected, such as fingerprints on the gun used by Samuel, quickly confirmed their suspicions. Samuel Carter, the bride's younger brother, was the perpetrator of this brutal crime. California police did not delay in launching a large-scale search operation. Investigators began combing through all of Samuel's possible locations, including places he had lived, worked, and areas he had previously associated with. However, Samuel had seemingly disappeared after the crime, leading police to believe he was hiding somewhere, trying to avoid capture by the law. As the search continued, investigators continued to interview Samuel's acquaintances, hoping to find clues as to where he might be hiding. They also tracked all bank transactions, phone calls, and any other signs that might indicate Samuel's movements. However, everything seemed extremely unclear, as Samuel was very careful to cover his tracks. The police did not give up, however. They expanded the search, working with other law enforcement agencies in the state and across the country, in case Samuel had left California. Photos and information about Samuel were widely distributed in the media, drawing public attention and appealing for help from anyone who might have seen him. Over the following weeks, numerous reports from the public were made to the police, but most of them yielded no positive results. Samuel had become extremely cautious, leaving no obvious clues as to his whereabouts. This only added to the stress and pressure on the investigators. However, things changed when a crucial clue emerged. A resident in a small residential area outside of California reported to the police about a strange man who was behaving strangely and appeared to be living and hiding in the area. The resident noticed that the strange man bore a striking resemblance to the photo that the police had released of Samuel Carter. This information was immediately passed on to investigators, who quickly determined that this could be the crucial clue that would lead to Samuel's arrest. With this new information, the police planned to surround the area where Samuel was hiding. They approached the residential area cautiously, trying not to attract attention so that Samuel would not be discovered and flee. As they approached the suspected location, they discovered that Samuel was living in an abandoned house, far from other houses in the area. During the siege, the police attempted to convince Samuel to surrender peacefully. They used a loudspeaker to demand that Samuel come out and assured him that he would be treated fairly if he followed instructions. However, Samuel, in a state of confusion and cornered, refused all calls. Instead of surrendering, he continued to barricade himself in the house, escalating the situation. After hours of unsuccessful negotiations, the police were forced to deploy special forces to enter the house. Samuel, realizing that there was no way out, finally accepted the fact that he could no longer hide. In a moment of weakness, he walked out of the house with his head down and his hands raised in surrender. The police immediately arrested Samuel without further incident. Samuel Carter's arrest marked the end of a tense manhunt that had lasted for weeks. Police quickly took him to the police station for legal proceedings, where Samuel was questioned about his motives and the details of the incident. During the interrogation, Samuel appeared tired and uncooperative from the beginning. However, under the pressure of clear and undeniable evidence, he finally admitted what he had done. Samuel explained that feelings of jealousy, loneliness, and obsession with Grace had led him to commit the violence at the wedding. He knew that his actions were unforgivable, but at the same time, Samuel believed that it was the only way to keep Grace by his side. Samuel's arrest and confession brought some measure of justice to the loved ones of Grace and Benjamin, but the wounds left by this event will not heal easily. The trial of Samuel Carter on June 20, 2013 became a shocking event, attracting special attention from the public and the media nationwide. From the moment Samuel entered the courtroom, the atmosphere became heavy, as if everyone present could feel the darkness and illness surrounding him. Samuel, who was once a talented architect and the younger brother of a beautiful woman, was now just an image of madness and crime. At the trial, the prosecutor exposed every sick act of Samuel in detail. They described the bizarre obsession he had nurtured for many years, the twisted love Samuel had for his sister Grace Carter. These statements made many people present shudder, and many people could not help but feel disgusted. The public and the victim's family sat in silence as they heard about the dark thoughts and crazy plans that Samuel had hatched, all leading to the horrifying moment when he murdered Grace and Benjamin right at their wedding. Outrage spread throughout the community as the brutal and sick details of Samuel were revealed. The media reported extensively on the trial. Every testimony, every tear of the victims' families were recorded, becoming unforgettable images in the public's mind. The public was not only outraged by Samuel's brutal murder, but also heartbroken by the sick love that turned him into a monster. When the verdict was announced, with a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, no one in the courtroom felt comfortable. Although Samuel knew that he would have to pay for his crimes, the wound he left in the hearts of Grace and Benjamin's loved ones would never heal. The trial is over, but the haunting memory of a love gone wrong, of the breakup and the crime, will forever haunt those who have known this painful story. Story 2. Love, with all its magic and wonder, often brings sweet and happy feelings. However, when love is not reciprocated, it can lead to pain, obsession, and even unpredictable actions. Unrequited love can be a painful experience, but sometimes it can become dangerous, leading to unexpected consequences when someone cannot accept reality. Hello everyone, welcome to Cryammer MKT. In this video, we will learn about a tragic case that happened in Hyderabad, India. This is the story of a young man who was obsessed with unrequited love, causing everything to escalate into a terrible tragedy. This case not only shocked society but also served as a serious warning about the dangers when people cannot control their negative emotions. Let's explore the events that led to this tragic ending. In June 2019, a mysterious disappearance sparked anxiety in the Hyderabad community. Lakshmi, a talented and beloved young woman, suddenly disappeared without a trace. Her family and friends were left in a state of shock when they could not contact her for several days. The police immediately launched an investigation, examining every single clue to find out what had happened. The matter became more serious when investigators discovered unusual signs surrounding her disappearance. The search continued until Lakshmi's body was found in a remote forest, far from residential areas. This heartbreaking discovery not only ended hopes of finding Lakshmi alive, but also revealed a horrific crime, sending the investigation into a dramatic turn that shocked the whole society. Lakshmi, 27, is a talented, beautiful, and intelligent young woman born and raised in a middle-class family in Hyderabad, India. Her life has been surrounded by love and devoted care from her family since childhood. As the only daughter, Lakshmi received much love from her parents, but she did not become dependent or undisciplined. On the contrary, Lakshmi is always aware of her responsibilities and constantly strives to excel in life. Growing up in a good learning environment and full of encouragement from her family, Lakshmi began to dream big about her future. She is especially fond of business administration, a field of study that she believes will help her make a difference in the competitive business world. After completing her high school program with excellent results, Lakshmi was admitted to a prestigious university in Hyderabad, where she studied business administration. The college years were not only a time for Lakshmi to acquire knowledge, but also a period when she practiced her skills and expanded her social network. Teachers at the school highly appreciated Lakshmi not only for her academic ability, but also for her positive attitude and dedication. After graduating with an excellent degree, Lakshmi was quickly recruited by a reputable manufacturing company in Hyderabad. This was a major turning point in her life, marking the beginning of a promising career. At the company, Lakshmi quickly proved her ability through the projects she participated in. Lakshmi worked in the project management department, where she took on tasks that required excellent organization, time management, and communication skills. Her meticulousness and ability to work under pressure helped the company complete many important projects on time and with high quality. Lakshmi's career is on the rise, and she is expected to go even further in the future. Lakshmi's life seemed perfect, with a rising career and a fulfilling personal life. However, everything changed when she started to attract the attention of Prakash, a colleague in the company. Prakash, 29, is a young man born and raised in a poor family in Uttar Pradesh, India. His life since childhood has gone through many difficulties, lacking in material things and family affection. Prakash is a quiet, reserved person and often keeps his distance from people around him. He does not have many friends, and his personal life is quite lonely. However, Prakash has a special passion for business, which motivated him to leave his hometown to seek new opportunities in Hyderabad. After completing a short course in business administration, Prakash was accepted into a reputed manufacturing company in Hyderabad, where he worked in the same environment as Lakshmi. Here, he proved himself to be a hardworking and capable employee, but maintained a withdrawn lifestyle and had little interaction with his colleagues. When the two worked in the same office at a manufacturing company in Hyderabad, Prakash was quickly attracted to Lakshmi's beauty and charm. Initially, he just silently admired her from afar, feeling the charm that Lakshmi brought every time she entered the room. With a quiet and reserved personality, Prakash initially did not dare to express anything, but Lakshmi's presence every day in the office gradually stirred up his feelings. Over time working together, Prakash began to find it difficult to control these feelings. He sought to approach Lakshmi, wishing to have more opportunities to get closer and understand her better. Small conversations and work exchanges became precious moments for Prakash, when he could be close to Lakshmi. His interest began to manifest more clearly, from small gestures like helping her with work to admiring glances. Although Lakshmi only saw Prakash as a normal colleague, in his eyes she became the center of all his thoughts. The development of feelings from admiration to unrequited love gradually made Prakash obsessed, and he began to dream of a romantic relationship with her. One day, after months of struggling with his feelings, Prakash decided to express his feelings to Lakshmi. He invited her out for coffee after work, and she agreed. At the coffee shop, in a cozy and quiet atmosphere, Prakash finally mustered up the courage to tell Lakshmi about his feelings that he had kept hidden for so long. He expressed that she had become an important part of his life, that he could not stop thinking about her, and that he wanted to take their relationship further. However, when Lakshmi heard Prakash's confession, she could not hide her surprise and confusion. With gentleness and politeness, Lakshmi explained that she had always considered Prakash as a brother, a valuable friend in the company, and that she had no romantic feelings for him. Lakshmi's rejection, although sincere and tactful, left Prakash feeling like he was being pushed into an endless void. Disappointment and heartache immediately flooded his mind. He thought his feelings would be reciprocated, but instead he was faced with the reality that Lakshmi only saw him as a brother. After being rejected by Lakshmi, Prakash became quiet and increasingly withdrawn. The rejection drove him into an obsessive state, unable to stop thinking about her. Every day at the office, seeing Lakshmi only increased his pain. Prakash gradually withdrew from social relationships, barely communicating with anyone, and isolated himself in his obsessive inner world. His unrequited love turned into a toxic obsession, leading him down a dark path. Some time after being rejected, Prakash offered to take Lakshmi home after work, claiming that he wanted to know where she lived so that he could easily help her if needed. Initially, Lakshmi was a bit hesitant, but seeing that he was a colleague and did not want to strain their relationship, she agreed. During the journey home, Lakshmi tried to keep the atmosphere comfortable, encouraging Prakash that even though their relationship did not work out, they could still be good colleagues. When they arrived at the house, Prakash was very polite and courteous, greeting everyone in Lakshmi's family in a friendly manner. He kept his calm demeanor, which made Lakshmi feel more secure and think that everything was okay. Lakshmi's family invited him to stay for dinner with them. Prakash, still maintaining his friendly and gentle appearance, happily accepted the invitation. During the meal, he tried to mingle and chat with everyone in the family, appearing to be a good and trustworthy colleague. The entire Lakshmi family felt comfortable with his presence, not suspecting his true thoughts and actions. After dinner, Prakash politely thanked Lakshmi's family for hosting him. He maintained a calm and friendly demeanor as he bid farewell to everyone. Lakshmi escorted Prakash to the door, and he acted completely normal. For the next several days, Prakash could not shake off his obsession with Lakshmi and his unrequited love. Her image constantly appeared in his mind, haunting him every moment. Every time he thought of Lakshmi, he felt a strong stimulation, which gradually led to deviant behavior. Prakash often masturbated while thinking of her. These actions only increased Prakash's obsession with Lakshmi, causing him to sink deeper and deeper into dark and dangerous thoughts. He was no longer just a normal one-sided lover, but a deeply obsessed person, with his emotions and actions spiraling out of control. A dark thought began to form in Prakash's mind. The obsession grew so strong that he lost all sense of reason or consequence. In his twisted mind, Prakash began to believe that if he could not win Lakshmi's love naturally, he would have to possess her at all costs. These thoughts started out as fleeting thoughts, but they gradually became more clear and concrete. Prakash began to imagine scenarios in which he could carry out his desire to possess Lakshmi, no matter what means he had to use. He lost the sense of right and wrong, and these obsessive thoughts began to control his actions, pushing him down a dangerous and sinful path. As dark thoughts took over his mind, Prakash began to plan in detail how he would kidnap Lakshmi. Prakash spent days searching for a remote location, far from residential areas, where no one would discover what he was about to do. He eventually found an abandoned house deep in a dense forest area, far from main roads and residential areas. It was an ideal place for his plan. No one came and went, and he believed that he could keep Lakshmi there without being detected. Prakash began to prepare everything meticulously. He bought necessary items such as ropes, tape, sleeping pills, and enough food to last for several days. Every little detail was carefully calculated so that he would not leave any traces or loopholes. Prakash also spent time observing Lakshmi's daily routine, from her time at work to her time at home, to find the most suitable time to execute his plan. He planned it carefully so that no one would suspect or discover his actions. In his sick mind, Prakash believed that this was the only way to capture Lakshmi and keep her for himself, regardless of the consequences. On June 3, 2019, Prakash decided to execute his dark plan. After work, he approached Lakshmi and invited her to his house to celebrate her birthday. Without suspecting anything, Lakshmi accepted the invitation, thinking that it was just a casual get-together with friends. She got on Prakash's bike, and they started moving. At first, Lakshmi did not feel anything unusual, but as Prakash started driving off the familiar road leading to the residential area, she gradually felt worried. As he continued to take her into increasingly remote and deserted areas, Lakshmi's suspicions began to grow. She asked Prakash to stop the car, but he ignored her request and sped up, making her panic even more. When they reached a deserted forest road, Lakshmi became extremely uneasy and begged Prakash to stop. But he did not listen. Instead, Prakash drove at a higher speed, heading straight for the abandoned house he had prepared in advance. When they arrived, Prakash's attitude changed completely. From a polite, calm person, he became cold and aggressive. Lakshmi realized that she had fallen into the trap of an obsessed and corrupt person. Prakash's sweet words and kind appearance are now just a cover for the cruel intentions he has been hiding all this time. Before she can react, Prakash has overpowered Lakshmi and dragged her into the abandoned house, where his dark plan begins. At the abandoned house, realizing the dangerous situation she is in, Lakshmi falls to her knees, tears rolling down her cheeks, and she starts crying and begging Prakash to spare her. In extreme fear, she tries to find a way out of this horrifying situation by saying that if Prakash lets her go, she will agree to be his lover and will not reveal anything about what happened. Lakshmi promises to keep it a secret, pleading that everything can start afresh, that she will accept his feelings, and that no one will know about this incident. However, Prakash, deeply haunted and lost in his own twisted thoughts, did not believe Lakshmi's promises. He had gone too far to turn back, and in his twisted mind he could not bear to let her go, no matter how much she begged. Instead of relenting to Lakshmi's pleas, Prakash's cruelty and possessive intentions became even more evident. Prakash only coldly smiled at Lakshmi's pleas. With a look full of obsession and cruelty, he said that if she wanted to survive, she would have to obediently do as he asked. Prakash insisted that as long as Lakshmi made him comfortable, served him as he wished, then he might let her go. In extreme fear and despair, Lakshmi felt that she had no other choice. In the face of Prakash's obvious threats, she had to accept his demands, doing everything he ordered, serving him as a prostitute. The humiliation and mental anguish that Lakshmi endured in those moments were indescribable. She was forced to comply to hold on to the faint hope that she would be released, but she knew in her heart that this situation could never have a good ending. After satisfying his animalistic desires, Prakash tied Lakshmi up tightly, using ropes to ensure that she could not move or escape. To prevent any attempts to call for help, he used duct tape to cover her mouth, rendering her completely helpless, unable to make any sound. Prakash then locked Lakshmi in a dark house where no light or sound could penetrate. She was left alone, in absolute fear and despair, realizing that she was being held captive by someone who had completely lost his humanity. Lakshmi was left in the dark, not knowing if she had a chance to survive. After making sure that Lakshmi could not escape, Prakash coldly left the house, leaving her alone and terrified. Prakash returned to the abandoned house a few hours later, carrying plenty of food and water. He had no intention of letting Lakshmi starve or die of thirst, but rather keeping her alive so that he could continue to satisfy his dark desires. Prakash removed the tape and partially untied her, just enough for her to eat and survive, but still ensuring that she could not escape. Over the next few days, Lakshmi endured abuse and humiliation from Prakash. He constantly forced her to submit to his every sick request, constantly torturing her both physically and mentally. With each passing day, Lakshmi felt herself being crushed more and more, stripped of all dignity and hope. Prakash showed no remorse or relenting. On the contrary, every time he saw Lakshmi being subdued before him, he felt more satisfied and powerful. His depravity only grew more brutal as he continued to turn her into a tool to satisfy his perverted desires. Lakshmi, imprisoned and humiliated, lived in unimaginable pain, every day a battle with fear and despair. After days of captivity and abuse, Lakshmi could not bear it any longer. The physical and mental pain pushed her to her limits. Instead of continuing to obey Prakash's sick orders, she began to resist, refusing to do as he asked. The anger and resentment in her heart erupted, causing her to curse and insult Prakash without hesitation, exposing all the contempt and hatred she had for him. Lakshmi's unexpected resistance made Prakash extremely angry. Unable to keep his cool, he beat her savagely, venting all his anger and violence on her. In a fit of rage, Prakash abused her one last time, torturing her cruelly, without any trace of humanity left. When his anger reached its peak, he decided to end it all. Prakash brutally killed Lakshmi without hesitation. After taking her life, he quietly dragged her body out of the abandoned house. He took her deep into the nearby forest where no one could find her easily. In the darkness of the jungle, Prakash threw Lakshmi's body into a bush, covering her with leaves and branches to hide his crime. After dumping the body, Prakash left the scene, trying to leave behind every trace of the terrible crime he had committed. As for Lakshmi's family, after many days of not seeing her return home and being unable to contact her, they began to worry. Her family went to the company where she worked to inquire, but her colleagues also had no news of her. The family's worries increased when they learned that Lakshmi had not been to the company for the past few days without any notice. Immediately, Lakshmi's family reported her missing to the police. At the same time, the company where Lakshmi worked also noticed the absence of Prakash, a colleague of hers. This coincidence made everyone even more worried and suspicious. When the police started investigating, they took statements from employees of the company. Someone said that they saw Lakshmi and Prakash leaving the company in the afternoon after work. The two were seen sitting together on Prakash's motorbike, but no one knew anything more about their whereabouts after that. This information immediately made the police focus on Prakash as the main suspect in Lakshmi's disappearance. The police started to follow the trail of the case. On June 7, 2019, after a massive search, police discovered Lakshmi's body in a remote forest near Hyderabad. Her body had been brutally dumped in a bush, covered with leaves and branches, in an apparent attempt to conceal the crime. The discovery left her family and the local community shocked and devastated. Police conducted a thorough investigation of the scene and quickly discovered traces of Lakshmi being held captive in an abandoned house located not far from where her body was found. Signs at the scene, including ropes and duct tape, along with signs of abuse and torture, confirmed that she had spent her final days in pain and despair. The abandoned house was identified as the place where Lakshmi was held captive and abused before killing her and dumping her body in the forest. Evidence collected at the scene supported a theory that Prakash was the culprit in this horrific case. The police continued to hunt for Prakash, who had been missing since the incident, to shed light on the incident. The police later arrested Prakash after following the clues and clearly identifying him as the prime suspect in the case. The battle of wits between the police and Prakash began from there, with lengthy interrogations aimed at finding the truth. During the interrogation, Prakash was repeatedly questioned about his whereabouts during his absence from the company. Although he tried to justify himself, he could not provide any concrete evidence to prove his innocence. The gaps in his story became more and more obvious, making the police more suspicious. At the same time, the forensic examination of Lakshmi's body showed clear traces, including Prakash's fingerprints on the victim's body and items at the scene. This evidence became the decisive factor in convicting Prakash. Faced with such undeniable evidence, Prakash could no longer deny it. Prakash confessed to all his crimes. He recounted every detail, from planning to kidnap Lakshmi, torturing her in the abandoned house, to killing her and dumping her body in the woods. Prakash's confession not only confirmed his cruelty, but also brought a measure of justice to a horrific case, bringing some measure of justice to Lakshmi and her family. Prakash's trial took place in October 2019, attracting the attention of the entire community due to the horrifying and brutal nature of the case. During the trial, prosecutors detailed the crimes that Prakash had committed, from kidnapping, holding Lakshmi captive, torturing her, to killing her. Forensic evidence, including Prakash's fingerprints and confession, were presented as irrefutable proof of his cruelty. Lakshmi's family was present in court, listening with pain to every detail of her death. Their immense loss was expressed through testimony, stressing that Lakshmi was a beloved daughter, sister, and colleague who had suffered terribly before her death. Prakash, faced with serious charges, could not deny his guilt. He had no choice but to plead guilty in court. Prakash's coldness and lack of remorse throughout the trial added to the outrage of the public and the victim's family. Ultimately, the court sentenced Prakash to the maximum sentence for the crimes he had committed. He was sentenced to death, ensuring that he would pay for what he had done. This sentence was not only a punishment for Prakash, but also a just retribution for the pain suffered by Lakshmi's family, and sent a strong message that such crimes would not be tolerated. The horrific case of Lakshmi's death has left a deep scar on the community and reminded us of the potential dangers when people are haunted by negative and distorted emotions. Lakshmi, a beautiful and talented young girl, suffered immense pain and humiliation before her life was brutally taken away. Justice has been served, but the pain of her family and loved ones will never fade. Story 3. Incestuous relationships, no matter how carefully hidden, often have serious and painful consequences for all involved. Boundaries are broken, trust is betrayed, and love is distorted into possession, ultimately leading to tragedy. History has seen many cases where these relationships ended in blood and tears, becoming living proof of the devastation caused by unethical and illegal actions. On June 4, 2017, in the small town of Akureyri, Iceland, a horrific crime occurred that is a terrifying testament to this truth. The victim was Veronica, a young girl full of life and hope for the future. The perpetrator was none other than her uncle Marek, a man who had experienced many failures in life, him to fall into a path of crime from which he could not turn back. Before going into the details of the case, I would like to briefly explain to you that this is a completely real case. However, to respect the privacy and avoid affecting the people involved, we have decided not to use the real names of the characters in this case. To ensure that we do not hurt or offend anyone, we have replaced them with other names. The purpose of sharing this case is to bring educational value to everyone. We hope you will sympathize, be happy, and continue to support us. Now, let's learn about the crimes in this tragic case. The case takes place in the family of Charles and Jennifer. Although Charles and Jennifer are not rich, they are always a model of love and solidarity in the small town of Akureyri, Iceland. Charles, 48 years old, is the main pillar of the family. He works at a local supermarket, a humble but stable job that helps him take care of his small family. Charles is a calm man who always puts responsibility first. Every day he works diligently from early morning to late at night, constantly striving to ensure a life for his wife and daughter. Jennifer, Charles's wife, is a 45-year-old elementary school teacher. With a gentle and devoted personality, she is not only a good wife and mother, but also a loving teacher to her students. Jennifer always has special affection for her students, treating them as her own children. To Veronica, their only daughter, Jennifer is a close mother, always ready to listen and share all joys and sorrows. Both Charles and Jennifer are very proud of their family. They live a simple but happy life, building a home filled with love and care. Veronica, the only daughter of Charles and Jennifer, is an 18-year-old girl full of life and dreams. At the age of adulthood, Veronica stands out with her beautiful appearance, clear eyes, and bright smile, always attracting the attention of those around her. Veronica's beautiful life, filled with dreams and hopes, is suddenly crushed when her uncle, Marek, moves in with the family. Marek, 30, is Veronica's uncle and Charles's younger brother. Marek used to run a restaurant, but after going bankrupt, his life fell into disrepair. Unemployed and unmarried, Marek was forced to move in with his brother's family in Akureyri, Iceland. Although the family welcomed him, failure and despair turned Marek into a dark person, leading him to embark on an unforgivable path of crime. At first, Marek's arrival did not cause Veronica or her family any concern. They welcomed him with open hearts, seeing him as a way to help a relative in need. Veronica, with her inherent optimism and kindness, always tried to treat her uncle with respect and friendliness. Marek, after moving in with his brother's family, initially tries to appear as a friendly and kind uncle. However, behind that facade, dark thoughts begin to form in his mind when he sets his eyes on Veronica, his teenage niece. Marek is attracted to Veronica's innocence and beauty, and gradually these thoughts lead him down a sinful path. Marek began with his sick and furtive actions. He often waited for Veronica to leave or when no one else was home, and sneaked into her room to steal her underwear. This was initially just an act to satisfy his sick desires. Marek felt a strange excitement at being able to possess his niece's private things. At first he was afraid of being discovered, but the excitement gradually took over, making him more reckless. Each time he stole Veronica's underwear, Marek not only felt satisfied, but also had a way to gain control over her. The items became a symbol of dominance and possession, and he became increasingly drawn into this obsession. The act of stealing underwear was not only a serious invasion of Veronica's privacy, but also marked the beginning of a series of terrible crimes. Little does Veronica know that the uncle she trusted is stalking her day and night. The mysterious disappearance of her underwear becomes a sign of a lurking danger that she doesn't realize until it's too late. The climax came one morning when Veronica's parents had both gone to work, leaving only the two of them at home. Marek, with his sick thoughts deeply ingrained in his mind, decided to carry out his disgusting act. Knowing that this was the only chance when no one else was home, Marek had prepared in advance, mixing a sleeping drug into the drink he planned to give Veronica. With a look of feigned concern, Marek offered Veronica a drink. Veronica, unsuspecting, accepted the glass from her trusted uncle and drank it all. Within minutes, the effects of the drug began to take effect. She felt dizzy, her vision blurred, and her body lost all strength. Veronica fell into a chair, completely unconscious. Marek, seeing his niece unconscious, no longer retained any restraint. He picked up Veronica gently but calculatingly and carried her into his room, where he had prepared for the disgusting act that was about to take place. In that dark room, Marek committed depraved abuse on Veronica, despite her innocence and weakness. In a coma, Veronica was unable to fight back, becoming a helpless victim of the sick actions of the uncle she once trusted. Marek did not stop at abusing her. He also took sensitive pictures of Veronica to use as a tool to threaten and control her for a long time after. Marek's cruelty did not stop at humiliating Veronica, but also caused her life from here to fall into a spiral of fear and despair. When Veronica woke up, she immediately felt pain and turmoil in her body. Her mind was still hazy, but fragmented memories from before she lost consciousness gradually came back to her, making her realize the terrible thing that had happened. Panic surged through her as she discovered that she had just been raped by the uncle she once trusted. The physical pain was nothing compared to the mental trauma she was enduring. Veronica felt humiliated and completely disoriented. While Veronica was still stunned and devastated, Marek coldly entered the room. Without a word of apology, without a trace of remorse, he looked at her with a brazen and threatening gaze, bluntly warning her that if she dared to tell anyone about what had happened, he would post her sensitive pictures on social media. Veronica felt as if her world was crashing down around her. She was trapped in a state of extreme fear, not knowing what to do or who to turn to for help. Feelings of despair, shame, and humiliation overwhelmed her. She knew that if the images were made public, her life would be completely ruined. In the days after the assault, Veronica lived in constant fear. Marek, not stopping at threats, began using sensitive photos as a tool to force her to comply with his every will. Veronica was pushed into a desperate situation, with no way out, because any resistance on her part could lead to those images being made public, completely ruining her life. At night, when the whole family was asleep, Marek would sneak into Veronica's room. Marek would not hesitate to go to her bed, pull her close to him and force her to sleep with him. Under Marek's control, Veronica could do nothing but close her eyes and endure his depraved actions. She felt like she was being turned into a puppet, with no freedom in her life. Even when Veronica was taking a bath, Marek did not spare her. He suddenly barged into the bathroom, locked the door and forced her to do as he pleased right there. Veronica tried to resist, but in her state of nakedness and facing Marek's constant threats, she was completely helpless. Each time like that, the humiliation and hurt in Veronica's heart grew bigger, turning her into a person living in endless fear and shame. Every morning, when Veronica's parents had gone to work, Marek would take advantage of this time to continue torturing her. He would drag her into his room and force her to do whatever he wanted, whether she wanted it or not. Veronica gradually became a prisoner in her own home, which should have been her safest place. She lived in a state of extreme stress, never knowing when Marek would appear and force her to submit to him again. With each passing day, Veronica felt herself sinking deeper into the black hole of despair. She no longer knew what to do to escape Marek's control and abuse. The images he held were like an iron cage, trapping her in fear and pain from which she could not escape. Veronica's life became a series of dark days with no way out, no hope, only increasing fear and suffering. After a long period of abuse, Veronica began to notice unusual changes in her body. Morning sickness, constant fatigue, and irregular periods worried her deeply. Despite her fear, Veronica decided to get herself checked out to confirm her growing suspicions. Veronica secretly buys a pregnancy test. When 2 clear red lines appear on the test stick, Veronica's fears become a horrible reality. She is pregnant and certain that the child is the result of her uncle's abuse. In a state of panic and despair, Veronica quietly went to a private clinic to confirm the results. There, the doctor informed her that she was 2 months pregnant. This information was like a blow to Veronica, leaving her uncertain about how to face the future. Carrying her uncle's child, Veronica felt as if her entire life had been completely ruined. When she returned home, Veronica knew she could no longer hide the situation. In a fit of grief, she decided to confront Marek, the man who had put her in this situation. She told him that she was pregnant, that things had gone too far and could no longer be hidden. Marek, hearing of Veronica's pregnancy, did not show fear or remorse, but on the contrary, he immediately realized that this could lead to the exposure of his crimes. The fear of being exposed and the consequences began to dawn on Marek. He knew that the child in Veronica's womb was irrefutable evidence of his depraved actions, and this drove him into a state of panic and danger more than ever. Veronica could not have imagined that informing Marek of her condition would lead her to an even more terrible tragedy. Terrified of being caught and punished, Marek began to plot how to undo the damage he had done. Marek knew that he could not let this continue. If Veronica decided to tell the truth, he would face unimaginable consequences. His thoughts became increasingly dark and desperate. Marek began to envision a cold and cruel plan to solve the problem in what he thought was the only way to eliminate Veronica and the child she was carrying. He began to plan meticulously. Marek decided to act at a time when no one would suspect anything. He pretended to be interested in Veronica, trying to create a casual atmosphere to hide his true intentions. Meanwhile, he began to look for a discreet location where he could commit the crime without being detected. Marek chose the riverbank near town as the location for his plan. It was a deserted area with few people around, and he knew that if anything happened there, it would be difficult for anyone to find out. He prepared carefully, carrying a knife hidden in his coat, ready for the action he had planned. On the afternoon of June 4, 2017, Marek pretended to be worried and asked Veronica to go to the river to talk. He pretended to want to discuss their future, how to resolve the situation without hurting anyone. Veronica, in desperation and feeling like she had no way out, agreed to go with Marek, hoping that she could find a solution to her terrible situation. Upon arriving, Marek sprang into action. He gave Veronica no time to react, immediately attacking her with the knife he had prepared beforehand. Veronica tried to fight back, but could not escape Marek's savage attack. In a panic, he stabbed her repeatedly until she was paralyzed. After committing the heinous act, Marek dragged Veronica's body to the riverbank and threw her into the cold water, hoping that the river would wash away all traces of his crimes. However, he could not escape the feeling of fear in his heart, knowing that the truth would eventually be exposed. But at this moment, Marek was only concerned with escaping the immediate consequences, unaware that all his plans would eventually collapse. As night fell and Veronica did not return home, her parents, Charles and Jennifer, began to worry. They tried calling her, but Veronica's phone was dead. A sense of unease grew as Charles and Jennifer realized that Veronica had never left home without notice or returned late without contacting her family. They began searching all over town, asking friends and neighbors, but no one knew where Veronica had gone. Their concern quickly turned to fear when there was no sign of their daughter's safety. Charles and Jennifer drove all over the roads, to places Veronica frequented, but all in vain. Finally, when they had no other choice, they decided to report Veronica's disappearance to the police. Upon receiving the news, the local police immediately began a search. They questioned Charles and Jennifer about the last details they knew about Veronica, as well as investigating anyone who might have been involved in her disappearance. However, all the initial clues were vague, and no one could figure out what had happened to Veronica. As the police expanded their search, Veronica's parents continued to hope that she would return, that it was all a misunderstanding or that she had encountered some situation that prevented her from contacting them. However, they could not help but think of the worst. Each moment waiting for news became a burden, and their anxiety grew as each hour passed without any news from the police. Throughout the time Veronica was missing, Marek remained anxious and actively participated in the search with his family and the police. He maintained a tense expression, feigning concern as if he were genuinely concerned for Veronica's safety. Marek accompanied Charles and Jennifer, drove around, asked friends and neighbors, and even suggested places where Veronica might have gone. Every time he met with the police, he did not forget to show his concern, asking questions like a responsible uncle. In this way, Marek tried to conceal his crime, leaving no one with the slightest suspicion that he was the one responsible for Veronica's disappearance. 2 days after Veronica went missing, a local resident who happened to be walking near the riverbank discovered her body washed up on the shore. He immediately reported it to the police, and the scene was quickly cordoned off for an investigation. Charles and Jennifer were alerted and rushed to the scene, but were heartbroken when they learned that the body that had just been found was that of their daughter, Veronica. Veronica's body was taken in for an autopsy. Forensic doctors worked diligently to determine the cause of death and to search for any clues that might lead to the killer. As they conducted the autopsy, they quickly learned a heartbreaking truth: Veronica was 2 months pregnant. This information was not only shocking, but also opened up a whole new line of investigation for the police. The autopsy revealed that Veronica had been assaulted with force, and that her death was the result of deliberate violence. The discovery that Veronica was pregnant at the time of her death has raised many questions for investigators about the father of the child, and whether this had any bearing on the motive for the crime. The horrific discovery not only devastated Veronica's family, but also sparked outrage and grief in the community. The investigation then focused on finding the person responsible for Veronica's death, with suspicion beginning to fall on those closest to her. After discovering Veronica's body and the news that she was pregnant, the police realized the complexity of the case and decided to expand their investigation. One of the first steps they took was to search Veronica's private room at home, hoping to find clues that would help clarify the truth about her death. During the search, they discovered Veronica's hidden diary. Through the years, through the words, the police gradually understood the fear and despair that Veronica had faced. The diaries revealed details of her abuse and threats at the hands of her uncle Marek. Veronica recorded every event, from the moment Marek began to harass her to the atrocities he committed. In particular, Veronica wrote about her fear of discovering she was pregnant and her worries about her future. This evidence immediately changed the direction of the investigation. The police realized that Marek, the uncle whom Veronica's family trusted, could be the one behind the whole incident. The threats that Merrick used to control Veronica, along with the fact that she was pregnant, became important evidence of his motive for killing his niece. Armed with the evidence gathered from Veronica's diary, the police were able to interrogate Merrick more aggressively. Initially, Merrick tried to deny the accusations, insisting that he had nothing to do with Veronica's death. However, when the police confronted him with Veronica's haunting diary entries, in which she recorded every detail of his heinous actions, Merrick began to lose his cool. The police continued to press, insisting that they would conduct a DNA test on Veronica's unborn child, and the results would be incontrovertible. Faced with the prospect of no escape, Merrick finally broke down. He confessed to everything, from the first times he molested Veronica, to when he decided to commit the act of assault and control her with sensitive images. Merrick coldly recounts how he exploited the family's trust to gain access to and abuse Veronica. He details how he drugged her, sneaked into her room at night, and even forced her to submit to his will in the mornings when her parents were at work. Merrick also admits that when he discovered Veronica was pregnant, he realized that his crimes could no longer be hidden, and that was when he decided to eliminate Veronica to protect his dark secret. He recounted emotionlessly how he had planned to meet Veronica at the riverbank, where he brutally murdered her. He then attempted to dispose of her body by throwing it into the river, hoping that the current would wash away all traces. However, these brutal actions became irrefutable evidence of his crimes. Marek's confession shocked the police and Veronica's family. The story of betrayal, abuse, and brutal murder by a loved one shocked the community. Merrick faced the consequences of his evil actions, but nothing could ease the pain and loss that Veronica's family had to endure. Marek's trial began quickly after he confessed to all the crimes. The case attracted public attention and the courtroom was packed. Veronica's family, still in shock and grief, sat in the front row, silently watching the proceedings. Merrick was charged with a number of serious crimes, including child abuse, murder, and attempted concealment of a crime. The prosecutor presented the court with overwhelming evidence, including Veronica's diary, autopsy results, and Marek's own confession. The gruesome details of Marek's actions sent shivers down the spines of many in the courtroom. Marek's defense attorney tried to argue for mitigation, but his crimes were too serious and unforgivable. After careful consideration, the jury reached a verdict. Merrick was sentenced to death. This sentence is not only a punishment for his evil actions, but also a warning to anyone who intends to take advantage of and harm the weak and innocent. The trial is over, but Veronica's family's pain will last forever. Although Merrick received the appropriate punishment, nothing can bring Veronica back, and the community is still haunted by the tragedy that happened to this once peaceful and happy family. Story 4. The case took place in Toronto, Ontario, in 2004 and attracted widespread media attention. Kristen Brown, a successful and famous fashion designer, was accused of murdering her sister, Nina Brown, just days before Nina's wedding. This event was not only a simple crime, but also exposed dark secrets about the relationship between the two sisters. Kristen and Nina were not only biological sisters, but also had a homosexual relationship, which both had hidden for many years. However, when Nina decided to marry another man, jealousy and explosive emotions led Kristen to a brutal act, turning their relationship into a horrific tragedy. Kristen Brown, born March 13, 1978, and her younger sister Nina Brown, born January 25, 1980, grew up in a family where education was always a priority. Their parents, both highly educated, always encouraged their children to pursue their passions and develop themselves. Kristen, with her outstanding aesthetic taste and creative talent, chose the path of art early on and became a fashion designer. She quickly rose to fame in the fashion industry with her innovative and well-loved collections. Kristen is known as a perfectionist, always pursuing perfection in her work, which has helped her gain respect and admiration from her colleagues. Meanwhile, Nina, with her love for science, chose the path of research and became a scientist. She specializes in molecular biology and has made many significant contributions to her field. Nina is highly regarded by her colleagues for her dedication and intelligence. She always seeks new challenges in her work and is constantly learning to improve her professional knowledge. Although both sisters have achieved considerable success in their careers, Kristen and Nina's relationship has not been entirely smooth. Even as children, Kristen and Nina had differences in personality and interests, leading to many arguments and conflicts. Kristen, with her strong and assertive nature, often imposed her will on Nina, while Nina, with her softer and more quiet personality, often had to give in to avoid conflict. These conflicts did not stop during their childhood, but continued into their adulthood. Kristen's success in the fashion industry sometimes made Nina feel pressured and overshadowed, despite her achievements in her scientific field. The unspoken rivalry between the two sisters is never acknowledged, but it is always there and affects their relationship. In addition, the complicated emotional relationship between Kristen and Nina is also a factor that contributes to the troubles between the two sisters. Love, attachment, and at the same time jealousy and pressure create a conflicted relationship. Kristen, who always has a desire to control, cannot accept Nina having a relationship with someone other than her. This led to deep conflicts, pushing the relationship between the two sisters into a state of tension. Since childhood, Kristen and Nina have lived very close, sharing with each other all the joys and sorrows in life. The sisterly affection between the two is not simply love and care like normal families, but gradually it develops into a more complex relationship. From comforting hugs, late-night conversations, the affection between Kristen and Nina becomes deeper and deeper, surpassing the boundaries of normal sisterly love. Kristen, possessive and controlling by nature, began to display feelings that should only exist in a romantic relationship. Kristen's feelings for Nina went beyond sisterly love and transformed into twisted love. She began to show intimate actions towards Nina, such as caressing, kissing, and even gestures that are only seen between couples in love. Initially, Nina reciprocated Kristen's feelings, perhaps due to the closeness and special bond they had built since childhood. She felt safe and protected with Kristen, the older sister she admired and relied on. Their evenings often ended with intimate moments, as the two of them lay together, sharing their private and secret things. However, as time went on, Nina began to feel that something was wrong. She gradually realized that her relationship with Kristen was no longer a normal sisterly relationship. The intimate acts they once shared now left Nina feeling confused and uncomfortable. Every time Kristen tried to take the relationship further, Nina felt more and more wrong and unsettled. She began to question whether this relationship was really right and how continuing it might affect her life. Nina gradually became cold towards Kristen, trying to keep her distance and avoid situations they had previously shared together. She realized that this relationship was inappropriate and could not continue. This realization came as a shock to Nina, who had always considered Kristen a solid support in her life. However, she understood that in order to have a normal life, she needed to escape this twisted emotional spiral. Kristen, on the other hand, could not accept Nina's change. She felt betrayed and hurt when Nina began to distance herself. Feelings of jealousy and resentment welled up in Kristen, making her increasingly stressed and frustrated. She could not understand why Nina wanted to leave her, and tried everything to hold on to the relationship she considered true love. Nina, determined to find a more normal life, begins to meet new friends and find a way to escape Kristen's shadow. She wants to build a future that is not dominated by this troubled relationship, and wishes to have her own family, a life where she can be true to herself without fear or hiding. This determination puts her at odds with Kristen, making the relationship between the two sisters increasingly tense and complicated. After escaping the troubled relationship with Kristen, Nina feels like she has turned a new page in her life. She decided to take time to heal her inner wounds and find joy in simple things. It was during this time that she met Henry Carter, a 27-year-old man with a handsome appearance and attractive demeanor. They met at a summer camp festival, where the cheerful and liberal atmosphere helped Nina temporarily forget the worries and pressures of the past. Henry was an active, sociable person and knew how to make others feel comfortable. From the initial light conversations, Nina and Henry quickly found a common soul. They shared many common interests, From music, art to the love of exploring new places. Their love gradually blossomed from simple dates filled with laughter and understanding. On weekend afternoons, Nina and Henry often strolled together on beautiful beaches, where the sea breeze and gentle waves created a romantic atmosphere. They also constantly explored famous tourist areas, from green hills to colorful ancient streets. Every trip, every memory is a step forward in their relationship, making Nina feel like she has truly found happiness and peace with Henry. Nina's life is now a brilliant picture, where she can freely love and be loved completely. However, while Nina is immersed in her new happiness, she does not know that Kristen is silently watching her every step. Kristen, whom Nina once considered the most solid support, has now become a jealous and obsessive person. Although Kristen remained calm on the outside, she was torn apart by negative emotions when she saw Nina happy with Henry. Love and dependence turned into jealousy and resentment, making Kristen unable to accept losing Nina to someone else. Kristen began to watch Nina and Henry from afar, silently observing their happy moments. She felt hurt every time she saw Nina smile, every time Henry held Nina's hand or kissed her forehead. Their normal actions towards Kristen became knives that stabbed deep into her self-esteem and pride. Kristen could not bear the thought of Nina, whom she once considered her own, now belonging to someone else. Kristen's obsession became more and more serious. She began to plan to win Nina back, regardless of the consequences. These thoughts haunted Kristen, causing her to lose her sanity and start acting in ways she could not have imagined. On Nina's side, during the 2 years of their relationship, Henry and Nina built a loving and strong relationship together. Their relationship was not only based on initial attraction, but also strengthened by mutual understanding and respect. They both felt that they had found their ideal partner, someone with whom they could share all the joys and sorrows of life. Henry, who had always been thoughtful and caring towards Nina, decided that it was time to take their relationship to the next level. He wanted to turn his love into a lifelong commitment, and there was no more perfect place to do it than Woodbine Beach, where they had shared so many wonderful memories together. This beach is not only a familiar place, but also the place that witnessed the happiest moments in their relationship. One beautiful afternoon, under the sparkling sunset, Henry and Nina walked together on the smooth sand of Woodbine Beach. The sound of waves gently lapping against the shore, the sea breeze caressing, all created a romantic space and perfect for Henry's plan. As the two stopped to watch the sunset, Henry suddenly knelt down and pulled out a beautiful ring from his pocket. With eyes full of love and a sincere voice, he proposed to Nina, wishing to share his life with her in the coming days. Nina, touched by Henry's heart, immediately agreed without thinking. At that moment she felt like the happiest person in the world, being tied to the man she loved deeply. They hugged each other, while the last rays of the day gradually disappeared, as a natural blessing for their love. After getting engaged, Nina and Henry began planning their wedding. They decided on June 25, 2004, a date they believed would be the beginning of a new chapter, filled with happiness and hope. They wanted a simple yet intimate wedding where family and friends could share in their joy. Nina spent a lot of time preparing for the big day, from choosing her wedding dress, discussing every little detail of the ceremony, to choosing the venue and menu for the wedding reception. Henry, out of love for Nina, also actively participated in the planning. He wanted everything to be perfect, a true reflection of their true feelings for each other. The evenings they spent together, discussing the wedding, only deepened their feelings. They both looked forward to their wedding day, believing it would be the most memorable day of their lives. Nina's life seemed to be on the rise. She had a job she loved, a man who cared and loved her, and a future full of hope. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, and Nina couldn't be happier thinking about her future with Henry. She felt that all the difficulties and worries of the past had been pushed aside, giving way to joy and excitement. However, life doesn't always go as expected. As the wedding day drew closer, Nina began to notice small but worrying signs that she had never noticed before. Little worries and insecurities began to creep into her mind, but she quickly brushed them aside, thinking that it was just the pressure of preparing for the wedding. However, Unwanted factors and unpredictable events are quietly emerging, threatening the happiness that she thought was within her grasp. When Kristen learned about Nina's marriage plans, she was struck by lightning. A deep sense of betrayal invaded Kristen's mind, and her jealousy and obsession with Nina became increasingly uncontrollable. Kristen could not accept the fact that Nina, the person she once trusted and loved the most, had now chosen to leave her to build a new life with someone else. The sense of loss and pain was so great that Kristen gradually lost her mind. In Kristen's mind, a cruel thought began to arise: if she could not have Nina's love, then no one could. This thought quickly became an obsession, overwhelming all other emotions in Kristen's heart. She no longer saw Nina as a sister but as a possession, and Nina leaving her to marry Henry was unacceptable. Gradually, Kristen began to cruelly plan to ruin Nina and Henry's lives. In her troubled mind, Kristen believed that there was only one way to keep Nina by her side forever, and that way was to completely destroy everything Nina was trying to build. Kristen's every action, every thought from the time. This desire haunted her, leading her down a dangerous and dark path. On June 21st, 2004, just 4 days before Nina's wedding, Kristen could no longer contain her jealousy and obsession that she had been harboring for so long. While her parents were away, Kristen knew that this was her only chance to carry out her cruel plan without being discovered. Kristen prepared dinner as usual, but this time she secretly prepared something different. In her private room, she took out a small vial containing cyanide that she had prepared earlier. With great care and precision, Kristen poured just enough cyanide into Nina's food, stirring to ensure the poison was completely dissolved. She had carefully studied the dosage needed to ensure that Nina would not survive, but still leave no obvious traces immediately. When Nina returned home after a busy day of wedding preparations, Kristen acted as normal as ever, inviting her sister to sit down at the dinner table with her. Nothing about Kristen's behavior made Nina suspicious, as Kristen had always been the trustworthy and gentle older sister she knew. The two sisters sat down and began to eat dinner in a seemingly peaceful and familiar atmosphere. Nina ate her dinner carefree, unaware that every bite of food she took was bringing her closer to death. Meanwhile, Kristen silently watched her sister, trying to keep a calm face, but inside her heart was churning with mixed emotions. She knew that after this meal, everything would change forever. Not long after finishing her meal, Nina began to feel uncomfortable. At first, she thought she was just tired from the stress and pressure of preparing for the wedding, but the pain quickly became more intense, making her start to worry. Nina felt like there was a fire burning in her body. The pain spread throughout her body, making it difficult for her to breathe, and she was drenched in sweat. The feeling of fatigue and pain was getting worse, and Nina realized that this was not a normal symptom. She tried to call Kristen, but her voice was weak and broken, unable to speak clearly. Kristen, hearing the faint cries from her sister's room, knew clearly that Nina was going through the last moments of her life. But instead of helping, Kristen stood silently in her room, coldly listening to the painful sounds echoing from the room next door. The pain became more and more intense, and Nina began to convulse violently. She tried to move, but her body no longer seemed to obey her will. Everything before her eyes gradually became blurry, and a feeling of panic invaded her mind. In her final moments, Nina only felt terrible pain, not understanding why her body had betrayed her so cruelly. Kristen in her room remained silent. She tried to stay calm, knowing that all the sounds from Nina's room were slowly dying down. The faint moans finally died down, and a deadly silence filled the house. Kristen knew it was all over. The next morning, Kristen woke up feeling cold and emotionless. She walked slowly to Nina's room, opened the door, and stepped inside. The sight before her eyes would make anyone shudder. Nina lying motionless on the bed, her face pale and a white foam floating around her mouth. Her eyes were wide open, staring up at the ceiling with a horror still etched in her last glance. Kristen stood there in front of her sister's body, showing no emotion. She stared at Nina's motionless face, as if remembering every last detail about her sister. But instead of feeling guilt or remorse, Kristen felt only a lifeless emptiness. After a few minutes, Kristen knew it was time to act on her plan. She rushed out of the room, pretending to panic and burst into tears. With shaking hands, Kristen picked up the phone and called her parents. Her voice was broken and choked, trying to convey the utter panic as she informed them that her sister had died suddenly. She repeatedly insisted that Nina had shown no signs of distress the night before, and that the incident had come as a complete surprise. After calling her parents, Kristen called the police again. She reported Nina's death and requested emergency help. She broke down in tears, had difficulty breathing, and seemed unable to clearly answer the police's questions about the events of the previous night. She repeatedly said that Nina seemed to be just and stressed before the wedding, and that no one could have expected this. After receiving a frantic call from Kristen early that morning, police and paramedics quickly arrived at the scene. They entered the quiet house, broken only by Kristen's sobs and broken words. Kristen, still playing the role of grieving sister, sat next to Nina's body, her face streaked with tears and her words trembling. She told police that she had found her sister lying motionless on the bed and had tried to call out to her, but Nina had not answered. Initially, police treated Nina's death as an accident or possible suicide. There were no obvious signs of forced entry or violence in the home. Nina was found lying on her bed, with no signs of struggle. The white foam around Nina's mouth, while noticeable, could have been caused by a number of things, including suicide by poison. Kristen told police that Nina had been going through a stressful time leading up to the wedding, and that the stress may have led to her taking her own life. Kristen's story initially seemed plausible, and investigators initially did not doubt her story. However, as part of the process, the police still conducted a thorough investigation to ensure that no important details were overlooked. When the forensic team performed the autopsy, they found clear signs of poisoning on Nina. This immediately raised suspicions of suicide. They decided to expand their investigation, focusing on details surrounding Nina and Kristen's lives, as well as any relationships or events that might have led to her death. Meanwhile, Kristen tried to stay calm in her story. However, as part of the process, the police still conducted a thorough investigation to ensure that no important details were overlooked. When the forensic team performed the autopsy, they found clear signs of poisoning on Nina. This immediately raised suspicions of suicide. They decided to expand their investigation, focusing on details surrounding Nina and Kristen's lives, as well as any relationships or events that might have led to her death. Meanwhile, Kristen tried to stay calm and continue her story. She cooperated with the police, answering all questions clearly and consistently. However, Kristen's overly calm and smooth story began to raise suspicions among some investigators. Some details in her testimony did not quite match what the forensic team found at the scene. The police began to investigate Kristen's recent behavior and relationship with Nina. They interviewed friends and relatives of both sisters, trying to find out if there had been any conflict between the two. Several family acquaintances began to reveal that Kristen and Nina had had conflicts and that their relationship was not exactly harmonious. This made the police suspicious of Kristen's true motives. In addition, when the police reviewed Kristen's transaction history and recent activities, they discovered a surprising detail. Kristen had purchased a small amount of cyanide from an online supplier just weeks before the incident. This was extremely important information because cyanide is a powerful poison, often used in intentional poisonings. This information immediately changed the direction of the investigation. Police began to look into the possibility that Nina had been poisoned by her own sister, and clues began to point to Kristen. Police searched Kristen's home, looking for any evidence of cyanide use. They discovered a small vial containing a small amount of residual liquid, consistent with the type of cyanide used to kill Nina. As the evidence mounted, Kristen began to lose her cool. Her testimony became disconcerting and inconsistencies began to appear. Her answers were no longer convincing, and the police realized that Kristen was trying to hide something. The pressure from the investigation gradually made Kristen lose control. Finally, when all the clues pointed to Kristen, the police decided to arrest her for murder. Kristen was handcuffed and taken to the police station while her eyes remained cold, showing no emotion. She knew that her plan had failed, and now she had to face the consequences of what she had done. When questioned, Kristen initially remained silent, refusing to admit her crime. However, faced with undeniable evidence and pressure from the investigators, Kristen finally bowed her head and confessed. She confessed that she had been so jealous and obsessed with Nina that she could not bear to see her sister living a happy life with someone else. Kristen confessed that she had planned to kill Nina for a long time and that buying cyanide was just part of that plan. She admitted to putting poison in Nina's rice bowl for dinner that night, then sitting silently as her sister died without intervening. The coldness and cruelty of Kristen's confession made even the most experienced investigators shudder. When the true story behind Nina's death was revealed, the entire community was shocked by the horrifying truth. Kristen, who was once known as a successful fashion designer and a model sister, now revealed her cruel nature. She was convicted of aggravated murder and faced a heavy prison sentence. She was imprisoned until her trial. Kristen Brown's trial took place in late 2004, becoming an event that attracted great attention from the public and the media. It was unbelievable that a successful and famous fashion designer like Kristen could commit such a brutal crime. Numerous newspaper articles and television programs covered the case, keeping it in the public eye for an extended period of time. At trial, prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence that Kristen had planned to kill her sister. They detailed how Kristen had purchased cyanide, traces of the poison found in Nina's food, and discrepancies in Kristen's statements to police. This evidence suggested that Kristen had committed the murder with careful planning, not a spontaneous or reckless act. Although Kristen's defense attorney attempted to argue that she acted in a state of mental instability, driven by feelings of jealousy and obsession, the truth is that Kristen's actions were not justified. The prosecutor argued that regardless of her mental state, Kristen had the awareness to understand her actions and had done them intentionally and cruelly. After carefully reviewing the evidence and testimony, the court concluded that Kristen's actions were intentional and extremely cruel. Tears and excuses could not hide the fact that she had taken her sister's life in a cold and calculating manner. Kristen Brown was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought to a close one of the most brutal cases in the city's history, leaving her family heartbroken and the community outraged. Kristen Brown, once a shining star in the fashion world, now faces life behind the four walls of prison, carrying with her regret and guilt for the rest of her life. Story 5. In the heart of Bergen, one of Norway's largest and most bustling cities, daily life goes on at the fast pace of a modern metropolis. An important economic and cultural center, Bergen is known for its quaint neighborhoods, bustling harbor, and tree-lined streets. However, on April 25, 2016, the city was shaken by a horrific event, a brutal murder at the wedding of a young couple. Emma and Jonas, held in a restaurant in the heart of the city, the much-anticipated wedding quickly turned into a heartbreaking tragedy, as dark secrets and betrayals were exposed amid the solemn atmosphere, turning the happy day into an unforgettable nightmare. Jonas was born on March 15, 1989, in Bergen, a large and developed city in Norway. He grew up in a middle-class family where his parents, both teachers, placed a strong emphasis on education and instilling strong moral values in their children. From an early age, Jonas showed intelligence and a love of learning, always achieving high academic results and being loved by both his friends and teachers. After graduating from high school with excellent results, Jonas studied engineering at the University of Bergen, where he not only put in the effort in his studies, but also actively participated in social and sports activities. His talent and hard work quickly helped him establish himself in the engineering field, and after graduating, Jonas began his career at a leading engineering company in Bergen. With a strong sense of responsibility and leadership skills, Jonas quickly rose through the ranks and became a project manager at the age of 27. His career was on the rise, and he was respected by his colleagues and superiors for his dedication and strategic vision. In addition to his successful career, Jonas was also known as a caring man who always cared about his family and friends. Jonas' life seemed perfect, especially when he met and fell in love with Emma, a beautiful and intelligent girl. Emma was born on June 2, 1991 in Bergen. She grew up in a loving family, where her parents always paid special attention to their children. Emma is the youngest of 3 children, and from a young age she was raised in a warm and nurturing environment. Emma stood out from an early age with her beautiful appearance and bright smile. She attracted attention not only because of her appearance, but also because of her gentle, friendly personality and outstanding intelligence. After graduating from high school, Emma studied communications at the University of Bergen. Here, she not only worked hard in her studies, but also developed a passion for fashion and art. Emma began modeling part-time and quickly gained attention in the local fashion scene, thanks to her natural beauty and professional demeanor. After graduating from university, Emma continued to pursue a career in communications and marketing. She worked at a large advertising agency in Bergen and quickly rose through the ranks thanks to her talent and creativity. Before meeting Jonas, Emma had a deep relationship with Bram, a man 3 years her senior. Their relationship began when Emma was still in college and quickly developed into a passionate love. Bram was a charming and passionate man, and he made Emma fall head over heels in love. They had many wonderful memories together, and Emma believed that Bram was the one she would spend the rest of her life with. However, this relationship did not last forever. After a few years together, the differences in lifestyle and future goals gradually caused them to drift apart. Bram wanted to pursue a career and a free life, while Emma began to desire stability and a more sustainable future. In the end, they decided to break up, although their feelings for each other were still very strong. The breakup with Bram left Emma with a deep wound, but she tried to overcome it and focus on her career. Despite the breakup, Bram always held a special place in her heart, and they kept in touch after that. When Emma meets Jonas, she believes she has found the perfect man to build a new life with. But Bram's reappearance in Emma's life, just before their wedding day, opens up old feelings and lays the groundwork for tragedy to come. After breaking up with Bram, Emma felt empty and sad. In a moment of weakness, she posted a sad status on social media, sharing her pain. Unexpectedly, this status attracted the attention of Jonas, a talented young engineer who happened to see the post while scrolling through. Jonas was attracted by the beauty and sincerity in Emma's sharing. Although he had never met her, he felt a special connection with this girl. Deciding to learn more about Emma, Jonas started following her personal page, and after a few days, he decided to send her a comforting message. At first, it was just words of encouragement and sharing about life, but their conversations gradually became more frequent and intimate. Through hours of online conversations every day, Jonas and Emma began to get to know each other better. They shared stories about their lives, their jobs, and their dreams. They realized that they had a lot in common, and gradually a romantic relationship blossomed from text messages. Soon, Jonas decided to meet Emma in real life. They chose a cozy cafe in the city for their first meeting. The meeting went better than expected as they quickly felt comfortable and connected. The dates became more frequent, and their feelings for each other grew deeper. After dating for a while, Jonas and Emma decided to go on vacation together at a beautiful seaside resort. This trip not only helped them understand each other better, but also strengthened their feelings. In a romantic moment on the beach at sunset, Jonas knelt down and proposed to Emma. She agreed without hesitation, filled with happiness. From then on, they started planning their wedding, hoping to build a new life full of happiness together. Although she accepted Jonas' proposal and was preparing for the big day, Emma still could not forget the memories with Bram, her ex-lover. Although she loved Jonas very much and cherished their current relationship, the deep feelings she once had for Bram still left an indelible mark in her heart. In a moment of weakness and longing, Emma secretly texted Bram, the man she had once loved deeply. In the text, she shared with Bram that she was about to marry Jonas, but also expressed her longing and desire to see him one last time before moving on to her new life. Emma hoped that this meeting would help her find clarity and close the old chapter in her life. However, she did not expect that these actions would lead to unforeseen consequences when Bram accepted her invitation to meet. And from there, a series of unexpected events began to take place, leading to tragedy on the wedding day. Emma's complicated emotions and hesitation between the past and the present created a dangerous situation. Filled with mixed emotions, Emma decided to meet Bram one last time before officially entering into married life with Jonas. Although she knew that this might be a mistake, she could not resist the urge from her heart, which still held sweet memories of their old love. Emma and Bram arranged to meet at a small hotel hidden in a quiet corner of Bergen. That afternoon they spent time together, recalling old memories and sharing the feelings they had both had. The closeness and familiarity between them quickly turned into affectionate and passionate gestures, as if time had turned back and everything between them had not changed at all. They spend the afternoon cuddling, indulging in emotional moments, despite the fact that Emma is about to become Jonas' wife. This encounter helps Emma relive the intense feelings she had for Bram. After the emotional afternoon at the hotel, Emma and Bram can't stop. The feelings that have been suppressed for so long explode, making it difficult for both of them to give up on each other. They start texting each other more often, sharing thoughts and feelings that they can't tell anyone else. Emma's double life becomes more complicated as she prepares for her wedding to Jonas, while continuing her secret relationship with Bram. They meet several times at the hotel, with the intention of giving each other everything before officially saying goodbye. Each time they meet, they sink deeper into this passionate but dangerous relationship. Emma gave her entire body to Bram that should have belonged only to Jonas. Emma and Bram know that they cannot maintain this relationship forever, and that sooner or later it will all have to end when Emma gets married. However, both of them cannot resist each other, and each encounter makes it harder for them to leave. In Emma's mind, she loves Jonas but cannot let go of Bram, creating a vicious cycle of inner conflict. This relationship, although hidden, eventually cannot avoid the light. Jonas, who is usually calm and thoughtful, soon notices small changes in Emma's behavior. He becomes suspicious when he sees her texting frequently and seems to have secrets that she does not want to share. Soon, Jonas discovers that Emma is secretly seeing Bram, her ex-lover. Although heartbroken and angry, Jonas does not reveal his feelings immediately. Instead, he decides to secretly follow her to find out the whole truth. Jonas uses a large sum of money to bribe the hotel staff where Emma and Bram often meet. With their help, he secretly places a hidden camera in the hotel room they often visit. The camera records all the intimate scenes between Emma and Bram, providing Jonas with undeniable evidence of his fiancée's betrayal. Despite knowing the painful truth, Jonas does not immediately confront Emma. He decides to wait until the wedding day to reveal everything, turning their big day into a drama that he himself directs. Jonas knows that Emma and Bram's betrayal will cost them, but he wants to wait until the right time to act. The suppressed emotions and pain of betrayal gradually change Jonas into a different person, ready to take revenge in the most brutal way. Finally, Emma and Jonas' wedding day arrived with their family, friends, and loved ones in attendance. The ceremony was held at a fancy restaurant in the city center, where every detail had been carefully planned to create a romantic and memorable atmosphere for the couple. However, behind the calm exterior, Jonas had prepared a plan that no one could have expected. With evidence of Emma's betrayal in hand, he decided to turn things around at the exact moment when she could not resist. As the ceremony progressed, everyone couldn't help but marvel at how perfect the couple looked. Emma, in her gorgeous wedding dress, and Jonas, in his elegant tuxedo, seemed like the perfect couple in everyone's eyes. But when it came time to give their speeches, Jonas took the stage with a knowing smile. He began by thanking his family and friends for coming to celebrate with them. Then, with a sudden change in tone, Jonas announced that he had a special gift to share with everyone. He signaled the restaurant staff to turn off the lights and turn on the big screen. The images began to appear, and the entire room fell silent as a video of Emma and Bram's intimate moments appeared on the screen. The intimate moments in the hotel that they thought would forever be a secret were now exposed to everyone. Emma was stunned, unable to believe what was happening. She was completely out of control and unable to give any explanation under the shocked and angry eyes of her friends and family. Bram, although not present at the ceremony, could not escape the humiliation when their secret relationship was brutally exposed. Jonas, after turning everything upside down, stood there looking at Emma with cold eyes. The wedding day, instead of being the happiest day of her life, had turned into a nightmare from which she could not escape. And that was also the moment when Jonas, in his rage and pain, decided to end everything in the most cruel way. As the video ended, the atmosphere in the restaurant became heavy and tense. Emma, in shock and remorse, could only cry and apologize to Jonas, admitting everything she had done. She tried to explain, trying to seek forgiveness from the person she had loved and was prepared to spend the rest of her life with. However, her apologies only added fuel to the fire of anger burning inside Jonas. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, Jonas approached Emma, and what happened next sent shivers down everyone's spines at the ceremony. He attacked her brutally and savagely, taking out all his pain and anger on the bride who had been the center of attention just minutes before. Although many people witnessed the horrific scene, none of them dared to intervene. They were shocked, frightened, and could not believe what was happening before their eyes. Some wanted to step forward to stop Jonas, but were deterred by Jonas's fury. Jonas, in his uncontrolled rage, did not realize that he had hit her too hard. When it was all over, Emma lay motionless on the floor, lifeless. Jonas, now realizing the consequences of his actions, was too late. The wedding day, which was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, turned into a terrible tragedy when the young bride Emma lost her life right in front of her family and friends. The incident shocked the entire city of Bergen, as a wedding that should have been a symbol of love and happiness ended in the tragic death of the bride at the hands of the husband she had betrayed. As soon as Emma collapsed and lay motionless on the restaurant floor, screams and panic began to ring out from the guests. Some people regained their senses and immediately called the police. Within minutes, the police were on the scene to control the situation and ensure the safety of those present. Jonas, still in shock after realizing he had caused Emma's death, did not resist the police. He quietly let them handcuff him and lead him away, leaving behind a scene of devastation and chaos. Witnesses were shocked by what had just happened, and the restaurant, which should have been a symbol of joy and happiness, was now the scene of a brutal murder. The tragic end to the wedding ceremony left an indelible wound in the hearts of both families and friends. The event also shook the city of Bergen, becoming a painful reminder of the devastation that anger and betrayal can cause. The horrific murder on the wedding day not only shocked the local community but also quickly attracted the attention of the media nationwide. Within hours of the incident, major newspapers and television channels reported on the incident, making it one of the hottest news stories of the day. Images from the scene, along with the dramatic story of love triangle, betrayal, and rage, quickly spread across the media. Reporters gathered in front of the restaurant, at the police station, and even in front of the homes of the victim and the perpetrator's families, trying to gather more information about the incident. The public, fascinated by this tragic story, kept up with the latest developments. The story of Emma, Jonas, and Bram became a topic of discussion not only in newspapers but also on social networks, where people constantly discussed and debated the causes and consequences of the case. The incident sparked heated debates about love, betrayal, and the fragile line between reason and emotion, when actions, outbursts, and anger can lead to unforeseen consequences. Emma's funeral took place in a gloomy and heavy atmosphere. Friends and relatives came to the church to say goodbye to her for the last time, but no one could hide their pain and shock at the tragic death of the young bride. The white flowers placed around the coffin were a symbol of the purity and innocence that Emma once displayed, but now became an ironic image of her cruel fate. Bram, Emma's former lover, also appeared at the ceremony, his face filled with pain and regret. Although he tried to remain calm, his eyes could not hide the torment as he stood before the coffin of the woman he loved. However, Bram's appearance was not warmly welcomed. Instead, he was met with critical looks and whispers from those around him. People gossiped about Bram's responsibility in this tragedy, about the ambiguous relationship he had maintained with Emma, and about his role in leading to her death. Although Bram did not directly cause Emma's death, he could not escape the condemnation of the community, who believed that their extramarital relationship was the main cause of the tragedy. Bram stood there, silently enduring the gossip and judgmental looks, knowing that he would have to live with the burden of this incident for the rest of his life. Jonas' trial attracted a great deal of public and media attention. Held in the Central Bergen courthouse, the trial quickly became the focus of national attention, with reporters, journalists, and interested citizens flocking to follow every development. Jonas was charged with murder, and although his actions were in a fit of rage, the court had to give a fair hearing to the overwhelming evidence that he had caused Emma's death. The prosecution focused on proving that Jonas had planned to expose Emma's betrayal on the wedding day, and although his lack of intent to kill was initially cited as a mitigating factor, the cruelty of his actions was undeniable. Jonas, in court, did not attempt to defend his actions. He admitted everything from discovering Emma's betrayal to bribing the hotel staff and installing cameras to record evidence. However, he stressed that he had no intention of killing Emma, but only wanted her and Bram to be held accountable for the truth. He expressed deep remorse for what had happened, and that Emma's loss was an unforgettable pain for him. Jonas' defense attorney tried to mitigate his sentence by citing Jonas' unstable mental state at the time of the incident, that he was deeply traumatized and had no control over his actions. However, the prosecution insisted that, under any circumstances, violence that results in the death of another person must be punished appropriately. In the end, after many days of debate, the court convicted Jonas of murder. The sentence was 20 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years if he showed good behavior. The trial ended in heavy silence as Jonas was led away, leaving behind a tragic case and irreparable loss. This event not only ended Emma's life, but also destroyed Jonas' future and left a deep wound in the community. Story 6. In January 2025, a seismic piece of news rocked South Korea's judicial system. A prisoner serving a life sentence was declared innocent in a retrial and released after 25 years behind bars. This case not only shattered records for the longest wrongful imprisonment overturned in South Korea, but also marked the first time a lifer was set free. Astonishingly, the person who walked out of that prison was a young woman with a slight frame. So what exactly did she endure? Why was her youth stolen within the confines of a cell? Let's rewind 25 years to unravel this story from its roots. On the early morning of March 7, 2000 at 5:50 a.m., a villager stumbled upon a man's body lying lifeless on a road near a bus stop in Wando, a small town in South Jeolla Province, South Korea. Police arrived at the scene and identified the victim as Kim Jae-hoon, a 52-year-old man with a level 3 disability, living roughly 4.3 miles from the bus stop. Scattered near the body were shards of a car's signal light, leading authorities to initially classify the incident as a hit and run. But something didn't add up. If the collision was forceful enough to shatter a car's light, the victim's body should have shown visible external injuries, perhaps even broken bones. Yet, the forensic report revealed no external trauma or internal hemorrhaging. Instead, it uncovered a blood alcohol level of 0.303% and traces of doxylamine at a concentration of 13.02 micrograms per milliliter. Was such a high alcohol level enough to render someone incapacitated and a physical disability affecting his mobility? How could Kim Jae-hoon have traveled 4.3 miles from his home to the bus stop? Police theorized that someone had laced his drink with alcohol and sedatives, transported him to the location, and staged the scene to look like a hit and run before fleeing. The perpetrator was likely someone close to Kim Jae-hoon. Days later, on the morning of March 9th, the victim's eldest daughter, Kim Shin-hee, walked into the police station and confessed. She claimed she was the one who had taken her father's life. Kim Jae-hoon had 3 children, Kim Shin-hee, 23, from his first marriage, a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter from his second marriage. Kim Shin-hee, a stage actress living in Seoul, appeared to come from a harmonious family, at least to outsiders. The news of her confession stunned the village. Yet, police had already flagged Kim Shin-hee as a suspect. She had arrived in Wando at midnight on the day of her father's death, but didn't return to her grandmother's house until 5:30 a.m. Those unaccounted for 4.5 hours coincided precisely with the time of the incident, and she had no alibi. In her initial statement, Kim Shin-hee admitted to crushing 30 sleeping pills into liquor, passing it off to her father as a liver tonic. After he drank it, she took him for a drive. As the drugs took effect, she abandoned him on the road near the bus stop, staged the scene as a hit and run, and fled back to her grandmother's house. But why would Kim Shin-hee do this to her own father? What drove her to such an act? She confessed that 2 months prior, she learned her half-sister had been coerced by their father into fulfilling his perverse demands. Recalling similar abuse she herself endured in middle school, Kim Shin-hee's rage boiled over, compelling her to put an end to it. Compounding suspicions, police discovered that Kim Shin-hee had recently purchased 8 accident insurance policies in her father's name, with premiums totaling approximately $250, equivalent to $350,000 KRW in 2000, a significant sum at the time. Was financial gain another motive? Kim Shin-hee's mother-in-law, with no alibi, insurance policies, a clear motive, and incriminating evidence, all signs pointed to Kim Shin-hee as the culprit. Just when it seemed the case was closed, Kim Shin-hee abruptly changed her story. During a crime scene reenactment, she recanted, vehemently denying poisoning her father and disavowing her earlier statement about his behavior. Was this a desperate attempt to evade justice, or was there a deeper miscarriage at play? The case's trajectory grew murky once more. Kim Shin-hee claimed her initial confession was coerced, not voluntary. She recounted that on the night of March 8th, during her father's funeral, her uncle-in-law pulled her aside and said, "Your brother did this to your father. If you don't take the fall for him, he'll be in serious trouble." Under this pressure, she went to the police and falsely confessed. In reality, her brother had a solid alibi that night, ruling him out as a suspect. Further investigation revealed that the story of their father's abusive behavior was fabricated by older family members, who pressured the siblings to lie. They claimed it would secure Kim Shin-hee leniency or even acquittal. The younger siblings, naive and overwhelmed by their elders, complied. As this narrative spread, the villagers' perception shifted. Locals began sympathizing with Kim Shin-hee, even petitioning for her sentence to be reduced. But how could she explain arriving in Wando on the exact day of her father's death? And what about those 4 unaccounted hours? Facing police scrutiny, Kim Shin-hee provided a detailed account of her movements before and after the incident, insisting the timeline was verifiable. She explained that on March 1st, a week before the crime, she and her brother drove from Seoul to Wando. They planned to return the same day, but her brother decided to stay longer at their grandmother's. Kim Shin-hee returned to Seoul alone. Coincidentally, on March 5th, she planned to visit Gwangju, near Wando, for a friend's housewarming party, intending to pick up her brother afterward. But that morning, her parked car was inexplicably damaged in a collision. The repairs delayed her plans, forcing her to cancel the party and apologize to her friends, who proceeded without her. Unable to attend, she also scrapped plans to pick up her brother. When she offered to send him money for a bus back to Seoul, he insisted she come get him. Relenting, Kim Shin-hee rented a car and left for Wando at 6 p.m. on March 6th. She arranged to meet local friends Park and Kwan that evening to catch up. En route, at the Taejun rest stop, she called her father to say she was on her way. He was drinking with 2 villagers at home and told her to drive safely, promising to cook chicken porridge for her arrival. The 2 villagers confirmed this. They overheard Kim Jae-hoon speaking with his daughter, who urged him to stop drinking. They described their relationship as warm, noting Kim Shin-hee's frequent concern for her disabled father's health. Police later verified that Kim Shin-hee arrived in Wando at 12:55 a.m. on March 7th, captured by a checkpoint camera. Kim Shin-hee explained that she didn't return home immediately because she wanted to meet old friends first. At 1 a.m., she used a public phone booth at the village's edge to call Park and Kwan privately. But given the late hour, her friends declined to meet, citing the impracticality of going out in the middle of the night. So Kim Shin-hee called her grandmother's house. Her younger sister answered, informing her that their brother and grandmother were asleep while she was painting. The sister added that their father seemed drunk and had just argued with their grandparents. According to Kim Shin-hee, her father became belligerent and uncontrollable when intoxicated. To avoid confronting him in that state, She decided to stay in her car, drinking and resting, and accidentally fell asleep. She only rushed to her grandmother's house after waking up. During their phone call, her sister asked where she was. Though Kim Shin-hai was already at the village's entrance, she lied, saying she was still at a checkpoint en route. This lie later became a critical piece of evidence against her. Police believed it proved she was orchestrating a premeditated crime by concealing her presence in the village. Kim Shin-hai countered that she lied impulsively, fearing her grandmother would be upset if she knew she'd arrived in Wando but prioritized meeting friends over coming home. Regarding her alibi, Park and Kwan testified at the preliminary trial, confirming they received her call that night. Tearfully, they lamented, "If we had met Shin-hai that evening, none of this would have happened." Despite their testimony, police remained skeptical. They suspected Kim Shin-hai deliberately called at an hour when her friends were unlikely to meet, crafting a convenient alibi. As for the incriminating notebook and insurance policies, Kim Shin-hai offered this explanation. Her dream was to become a screenwriter, and she often jotted down story ideas in her notebook. These suspicious phrases were merely part of a fictional plot she was developing. And the 8 accident insurance policies for her father? She explained that at the time insurance was a popular trend, with agents frequently visiting homes to pitch policies. Since her disabled father couldn't qualify for standard life insurance, Kim Shin-hai purchased multiple accident policies, intending to compare them and cancel some later. In fact, by the time of the incident, 3 policies had already been canceled. Moreover, when purchasing the policies, she concealed her father's disability, indicating a potential breach of disclosure obligations. Additionally, the policies required a 2-year waiting period before payouts could be claimed for accidents. Having worked at her aunt and uncle-in-law's insurance agency, Kim Shin-hai would have known this rule. If her goal was to fraudulently claim insurance money by staging an accident, just 2 months after purchasing the policies, she would have been aware that no payout was possible. Logically, she would have waited 2 years to execute such a plan. Even if the insurance company mistakenly paid out, the primary beneficiary was not Kim Shin-hai, but her father's second wife, her stepmother. This detail raised further questions. Moreover, Kim Shin-hai insisted that from the moment of her arrest, she steadfastly denied being the culprit. She accused the police of ignoring her claims, conducting coercive interrogations, and forcing her to provide fingerprints. The police, however, dismissed her allegations of misconduct. On April 1, 2000, the prosecution charged Kim Shin-hai with 2 counts and sought the death penalty. After navigating the preliminary, appellate, and final trials, the Supreme Court sentenced her to life imprisonment. Yet, even behind bars, Kim Shin-hai never wavered in proclaiming her innocence. She tirelessly sent letters to government agencies, civil society organizations, media outlets, and beyond pleading her case. Her cause caught the attention of Park Jun-young, a lawyer specializing in retrials. Thus began Kim Shin-hai's arduous journey toward justice. She was 27 years old, and this fight would span 25 years. According to Attorney Park, the police investigation was riddled with serious procedural flaws and logical inconsistencies. The critical issue was that authorities had pegged Kim Shin-hai as the culprit from the outset. Despite her initial confession, the principle of presumed innocence demanded they explore multiple possibilities, not zero in on a single suspect with biased intent. This led to a failure to gather decisive evidence early in the case. When Kim Shin-hai recanted her confession, the case lacked any solid evidence to uphold her guilt. Take the sleeping pills, allegedly the murder weapon. Police initially claimed Kim Shin-hai crushed 30 doxylamine pills into a bowl of rice and mixed them into liquor, wiping away spilled powder with a rack and discarding it in the trash. Typically, 30 doxylamine pills would yield a blood concentration of about 4.7 micrograms per milliliter. To reach the level found in Kim Jae-hoon's blood, at least 100 pills would have been required. So, where did Kim Shin-hai acquire such a large quantity of pills? Police found no evidence of purchase nor traces of the drug in the rice bowl or rag at the house. Even the bottle of liquor Kim Jae-hoon supposedly drank from and the glass were never recovered. Crushing so many pills into powder would likely leave visible residue in the liquor. Wouldn't Kim Jae-hoon have grown suspicious seeing such a drink? Even if he consumed it without question, the dose would have induced immediate unconsciousness. How could he have walked downstairs and gotten into a car for a drive? Moreover, Kim Jae-hoon was not a small man, unlike Kim Shin-hae, who stood 5 feet 1 inch and weighed 84 pounds. Could she have managed him alone? Crucially, no blood or hair from Kim Jae-hoon was found in the rental car she drove. While investigative techniques in 2000 were limited, no definitive evidence linked Kim Shin-hae to the crime. Additionally, police violated procedural protocols. They searched Kim Shin-hae's residence without a warrant. Of the 2 individuals conducting the search, only one was an authorized officer, the other was a military friend of the policeman. This rendered the search illegal, invalidating the evidence collected. Overall, the evidence used to convict Kim Shin-hae was deeply flawed. Beyond her initial confession, there was no clear proof of guilt, and some evidence even suggested her innocence, yet she was sentenced to life in prison. As the case gained media attention, it sparked heated public debate. Kim Shin-hae's retrial took a significant turn in January 2015, when the Korean Bar Association filed for a review. 15 years had passed since the incident. In November 2015, the Gwangju District Court approved the retrial request. This marked the first time a lifer in South Korea was granted a retrial. However, the prosecution's appeal led to a complex and protracted legal process. It wasn't until 2018 that the retrial was officially confirmed. Kim Shin-hae then endured another 7 years of waiting. On January 6, 2025, the prolonged retrial reached a pivotal moment. The court declared Kim Shin-hae not guilty. It ruled that the illegally obtained evidence was inadmissible and no decisive proof established her guilt. The court also acknowledged that her initial confession could have been coerced, leading to her acquittal. Thus, the suspect arrested in 2000 and sentenced to life imprisonment walked out of prison in 2025. However, the prosecution rejected the not guilty verdict and filed an appeal. Kim Shin-hae will attend the appellate trial while out on bail. If she is acquitted in both the appellate and final trials, she will become South Korea's longest, D5 longest, wrongfully imprisoned person. Under current law, she would be eligible for criminal and state compensation amounting to millions of US dollars. In February 2025, the Korean investigative program Unanswered Questions aired a follow-up interview about the case, revealing details of Kim Shin-hae's life after release. The episode garnered significant public attention. Living with her brother, her sole guardian, Kim Shin-hae exhibited severe paranoia. She claimed to be a Russian royal and the heir to a Chinese billionaire, insisting she faced no punishment and didn't need to attend trials. She declared her brother had long been dead, replaced by a North Korean dictator monitoring her, among other shocking statements. Her inconsistent and perplexing claims were accompanied by erratic behavior, such as showing reporters a notebook filled with cryptic symbols which she insisted proved her father, Kim Jae-hoon, had kidnapped her. One day, Kim Shin-hae packed her backpack and fled her brother's home. Reporters struggled to locate her at a police station, where she refused to return, claiming everything was a setup to harm her and that she needed to escape to China. Experts believe her paranoia began around 2017 to 2018. After the 2015 retrial approval, her high hopes for freedom turned to despair as the process dragged on. Losing trust in others, she developed a defensive mindset, believing everyone was conspiring against her. During her 10-year retrial fight, her paranoia led her to fire attorney Park Jun-young 11 times. Each time, her brother rehired him outside court, further delaying the process. Throughout her 25 years in prison, Kim Shin-hae relentlessly proclaimed her innocence. She requested solitary confinement, rarely interacted with other inmates, and wrote incessantly about her wrongful conviction. The grueling years took a toll, making mental health challenges almost inevitable. Her family fears her unpredictable behavior could lead to dangerous outcomes. Consequently, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for monitoring and treatment. Experts warn that if her condition doesn't improve, future trials may proceed without her presence. Though free from prison, Kim Shin-hai has not reclaimed true freedom. Her 25 years of incarceration stole not only her youth, but also her ability to live a normal life. With her acquittal, Kim Jae-hoon's case remains an unsolved mystery fraught with lingering questions. Consider the uncle-in-law, who rarely interacted with Kim Shin-hai's family and shared no blood ties. Why did he involve himself so deeply in this case? Between Kim Shin-hai and her uncle-in-law, one of them must be lying. So, who is the one twisting the truth? Another perplexing question. Even if her uncle-in-law pressured Kim Shin-hai to confess on behalf of her brother, why did she comply without resistance? Was her love for her half-brother so profound? This decision raises profound suspicions. If the uncle-in-law was the one fabricating, what could his motive have been? He had no apparent conflicts of interest with Kim Jae-hoon, and on the night of the incident, he had a solid alibi, lacking both motive and opportunity to commit the crime. So, if neither the uncle-in-law nor Kim Shin-hai was the perpetrator who orchestrated this crime and concealed it for 25 years. Of course, the court's not guilty verdict only establishes that there's insufficient evidence to convict Kim Shin-hai, not that she is entirely innocent. Even with an acquittal, escaping the shadow of public suspicion remains a daunting challenge. Her initial confession, the questionable insurance policies, the 4-hour gap without an alibi after arriving in Wando, the cryptic entries in her notebook, these elements leave a haunting question mark and a deep sense of regret. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.